this is going to rumble and rumble and rumble and rumble and rumble on. The talk of this deal, which I've got to correct a couple of things as well. In our initial thumbnail, it did say that AFC Bournemouth had voted against it. That is not necessarily the case. And it was actually a case that they decided to go against the actual proposal that was put on the table, this £900 million proposal to the EFL. Now, there's been quite a few comments that I've been reading, and I am going to respond back to a number of those. I'm not going to mention who they're from, to for the interest of keeping it all very, very, I don't want to disclose, names effectively. But let's start off with the first one that actually come to me is a case of, well, they didn't help us out back in the day. And whilst I guess that, the teams in the Premier League didn't help us out back in the day when we were on minus 17, um, you know, there were teams who did. You know, Southampton fans did put money in the buckets. We know that. Back during some of the darkest days for this football club, they will tell us about that time and time and time again. But, you know, I think we should take the moral high ground here at AFC Bournemouth, and really we should do everything we can because we've been there, we've done that, we've got the T-shirt. We've been, in a situation where we haven't been very lucky, and there's going to be other clubs, going through hell, in the EFL because of money struggles, and the pyramid in this country is incredibly important. Now, they don't have it in America. And when you look at the clubs that actually voted, six of those are actually ran by American owners. And of course, in America, they don't have a promotion and relegation system from the NHL, the NFL, the MLS. And that is what is unique in this country. Say for example, take any team, Colchester United. If Colchester United went on a run and, after successive promotions, managed to get promoted to the Premier League, they're a Premier League football club. That is the beauty of it. Likewise, if Manchester United, went on a bad run and was relegated into the fourth tier of English football, they're a League Two football club. The promotion and relegation system is important in this country. It is. There's no doubt about it. It allows teams into the football league, as well as allows teams out of the football league. You know, if they don't achieve certain aims, which is to get enough points to stay in it, or if they go the other way to get themselves into the Premier League, and then they can be relegated back in to the EFL if again they don't hit the required standard. So I think it's important, to make that point initially. That pyramid is important, and why should we care about them? I think we should take the moral high ground. You know, yes, we did feel like we was on our own back in 2008 for large periods of time. However, that doesn't mean that that is the way that AFC Bournemouth should conduct things. So that's the first, thing. There was always this talk that Manchester United could bail us out with a week's salary for their whole group of players, and they probably could have. And clubs should help each other out, um, but unfortunately they don't, and that is it's sadly across the whole of society. Really, you won't have a rich person bailing out somebody who is really struggling, however much they try. And yeah, unfortunately, sadly, that is how human beings are. The next part um, was with regards to the running close and falling foul of financial fair play. Now, this was put, on Facebook, and the person did not take too nicely to my initial video. Hey ho, opinions. That's what it's all about, is opinions. Now, this gentleman, was quite grumpy about it, and said, and I've heard that, we are sailing a little bit close to the wind. I think that's the nice way to put it with regards to FFP. And, if this deal was authorized by this club, you know, would we be happy with a 6 point deduction? Now, there's two ways to look at this, and I'll I'll go through both of those. Now, the first way, to look at this is we shouldn't have done that in the first place. We shouldn't have spent as much money. There has been the rumor, that has gone round, and I've heard it as well, that David Brooks was effectively loaned out to Southampton to avoid FFP problems. Of course, Nottingham Forest have fallen foul of that, as have Everton. One of those have voted against, not voted, sorry, say it again, but gone against, this ruling, this suggestion. And one of them has gone for it, which is Everton. Um, so, should, would we be happy? Well, we shouldn't have done it in the first place. We shouldn't have spent the money if we couldn't afford it in the first place. We do have a rich owner. There is no doubt about that. We've got a rich owner, so the affordability side goes out the window. But you know, yes, I do get the point that we don't want a points deduction. Um, but there is that essence of we shouldn't have spent if we knew that we was going to fall foul of it. Now, the other side of looking at it is just what I've just said there. Have the Premier League made up the rules halfway through? Because it seems like they have with Everton, and it does feel like they have with Nottingham Forest and Everton again. With regards to this charge for financial fair play. I'm going to be perfectly honest. If they change the rules halfway through the season, then you cannot charge a club for that. You've also got to, and I've said this before as well, you've got to charge Chelsea and Manchester City before you charge AFC Bournemouth or Crystal Palace or Wolves or any of these other teams. So I do get the point that was made, that by that person. However, I guess it's when they were made aware. If they were made aware after they had spent that money, wrong. The Premier League should be held accountable. If they've spent that money and then were told afterwards, by the Premier League, and they've come in mid-season, mid-season, and AFC Bournemouth haven't been able to do anything about it, as have Everton, as have Forest, as have every other team that have gone against this. And if that is a valid reason, then I will be completely honest and turn around and say that is a Premier League issue, and I can understand why this hasn't gone through. But the biggest one of all, and the biggest one of all, was made, only an hour ago, and it was with regards to parachute payments. And the club is ran well. Now, I'm not going to doubt that. I'm not going to doubt that at all. Um, I am very thankful to how this football club is ran. Um, I maybe was a little bit harsh, in that previous video. And, I'm sorry if that kind of rubbed a couple of people up the wrong way. Um, I've always respected and, commended everything that our board have done. Um, Especially since, the Eddie Mitchell days leading up to now. Neil Blake, is a fantastic CEO. I've got to be honest. That's personally what I think. Some people don't agree with that, but I think he is. Parachute payments. If this was coming in to replace parachute payments, which is one of the suggestions that has been made, and it's not just by this person, um, who actually, mentioned it to me, did it very, very nicely, and I appreciate that and thank you for doing that. But if this is coming in to replace parachute payments, I can understand why teams would have gone against this and would have voted against it. When you're relegated from a league like the Premier League, which is awash with money, and this is another argument for another day. If you have got a rich owner like Newcastle have, or we have, you know, there has to be a view that you should be able to spend a deep. I'm not saying go absolutely mental and do what Portsmouth did, but you should be able to spend an amount to actually make yourself more competitive. Otherwise, you know, and for a club of our size, which has got an 11,000 seater stadium, you know, we are going to just be stuck where we are. We are not going to progress. So there has to be that thought process about it that, okay, we should be able to spend a little bit more to make ourselves competitive. Otherwise, it's just going to become a closed shop because Manchester United have got the biggest stadium in the country. They've got the biggest fan base in the country. Again, they'll take over. Arsenal, not far behind. They'll of course take over. They'll be able to spend a lot. Newcastle, should really be able to spend a fair bit. Manchester City, though, and this is an interesting one, haven't really got a massive global fan base at this point in time. Remember, back in 1998, they were relegated from the old Division 1 and, subsequently played us in the old Division 2 the following season. That's what I'm saying. You should be able to spend, if you've got a rich owner, sensibly, sensibly, not saying go absolutely potty and put yourself into administration, but otherwise it's going to be a closed shop. And this is what the problem is, and this is why something needs to potentially change because these big clubs will like what what is being suggested, that you can only spend so much of your turnover and your revenue, because it will mean that because they've got a bigger fan base, because they've got a big ground, because of all that, they will be able to stay at the top level of football for a lot longer than a club like ourselves, who have got an 11,000 seater stadium. This is the argument with the Everton situation. And then when you take into account parachute payments, when you are paying to compete at this level against some Goliaths, you do need that cushion. You need that safety net. And if that safety net is taken away from you, then that's a problem. If that is shared across the EFL, whilst I understand and completely, agree that it's not a bad idea in context, because I think, money does have to, go back into the grassroots of the game. That is so important to me. But, if say, for example, we was to drop out of the Premier League, We need a little bit of a safety net, an additional safety net to make sure we're okay, because there is no guarantee that we will sell players. Now, clubs need to manage themselves right to make sure that they don't put players on long-term contracts. I'm looking at you, Chelsea. Chelsea, for example, if the unthinkable happened and Chelsea were relegated into the Championship, and those players were not performing at this level or Championship level, they would be stuck with them because no other team would be able to afford those wages. No other team would be able to afford the salary. That's stupidity. Us paying to compete, which I feel is what we've done, isn't stupidity. And we are a well run club. We are well managed. I do feel that, in the Maxim Deming days, we were, incredibly well run. Of course, we've got a little bit more ambitious now. And therefore, with ambition comes risk. And with risk comes, potential of financial deficits. And that's what needs to be managed. And that's why there is parachute payments. And that is why, when we went into the championship the last time around and fell back into the championship because of the sales of Callum Wilson and Nathan Ake, we was able to restructure, rebuild, re-evaluate ourselves, and that's important. So I'm hoping that this clarifies my position, the channel's position. Yes, I'm still not happy that we are going against this, but I think we need to hear more context from the football club about why they have decided against it. And it will be very, very interesting to get the actual answers to that, because there's going to be a reason. There's going to be a reason. And do you know what? When you listen to that reason, it might not be stupid at all. It might be a case where I turn around and I say, well, to be honest, I was dead against what you did, but at the same time, now I can fully understand why you had no other alternatives. If they are removing parachute payments, I think personally it makes sense not to have done this. So, yeah, let us know what you think. Leave a comment in the comment section, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you for joining us.